we talk about education, but we're still dealing with the same systems that were there back in the 80s, back in the 70s. Yet, we have technology that can enhance that. We have technology that can make it better, especially for the people who are in rural Kenya to have the same chances as those in urban areas. Step forward, Mr. Kago Kagichiri, CEO, Eneza Education. Good morning.
Morning.
Now, when was it? Was it last year that you were here?
It wasn't last year. It was
earlier
sometime
this year.
in April, March.
Exactly.
Maybe. Yeah.
And we spoke about Eneza Education. Let's just recap what Eneza Education is about.
Yeah, so Eneza Education is a virtual classroom on any mobile phone. We've partnered with Safaricom in Kenya to provide Shupavu 291, which is an all-you-can-eat education subscription for 10 shillings a week. So students can get on and learn, which means we have the full local curriculum mapped to the national standards, and they can track their own personal goals, which means every student has their own learning track on our platform. The second thing is that they can discover. So they have access to Wikipedia even though their phones are not connected to the internet, because we have a way of connecting SMS to internet services. And so because of that, they can also access references like a dictionary. And then I think the most favorite thing for our learners is the leaderboards. So every day on the live top 10, we find about 100 students are competing to be the top 10 students. And there's a number of other things like how we've gamified it so that after every lesson they're unlocking a story about Miss Mandizi, who's the evil African villain who stole money from the education fund. And they're following her through the journey on the app. So yeah, essentially what we've done is we've taken the a very live premium classroom experience, and we've modeled it for SMS so that all the underserved students in the most remote parts of Kenya can access it.
And this is quite timely because our classrooms at the moment are very packed. We've seen this when the free primary education started, and of course talk about secondary education, free secondary education started. There's no longer that one-on-one contact with the teacher, but this gives you that chance because there are teachers enrolled as well in this.
Yes, so because we've done so much work earlier trying to go for whole school adoption and realizing that schools are suffering the same problem. So that Richard guy, I mean, very profound. I love him, but it's not going to change like in a day. Fine, you can present the case, but it's not going to happen. Schools just don't have the freedom to be able to make these changes that fast. And so, we know that most Kenyans have a mobile phone. And so we said, let's use the mobile phone to empower students. And very soon we realized that mobile phone has access to the farmer, the parent, the teacher. And so now we even have teacher development courses and a basic business course around loan financing for, parents and students and small, medium businesses.
Now, when you came in earlier on this year, we had, we looked at the numbers and it was growing. It was about
500,000.
500,000.
Yeah.
Where are we now?
We're at 1 million users now. So, awesome. our user base has almost doubled, actually has doubled. And, it's been a really great partnership. Safaricom along with, I think the users keep coming in. It's also that time of the school year where, all the students are scared for exams because, big tests are going to determine what their status is, the end of this year, next year, index numbers, all that, we did it. And so, I think, users are coming onto the platform, but I think the key thing for us is users stay. So even in January when, most school facilities are low, users are still, taking a lot of lessons and interacting with our application, which we're happy about. I don't think there's any application in East Africa or Sub-Saharan Africa that's having this kind of education traction.
Actually, we're going to get into it in the next link and just expound on it. Actually, go through it. This is Shupavu 291. So if someone is in the car and they can just go.
Yeah, so I mean, right now from your Safaricom line, just dial *291 hash, then select register on the next screen. You'll be asked to subscribe to our product. And after that, you can choose between our various courses, between the primary course, the secondary course, the business course, or the teacher course. Definitely recommending the business course for all small, medium entrepreneurs, or even people who've just never taken a course on Shupavu, because there's a lot of stuff that I learned there, even about M-Pesa and taking loans from a bank that I didn't know. And I'm an entrepreneur for how many years now? 6, 7. Yeah.
All right. I'll be doing that. Meanwhile, you can let me know where you are and what's happening on the road. Talk more about education right here with Kago Kagichiri, CEO Eneza Education. And a lot of questions coming in, and we'll try and answer all the questions as they're coming in. Hit us up on 984 in the morning. You can call us on 2224464. But as we talk about technology and education, we talk about laptops in Kenya and free education, we must talk about how it's going to work, and of course accessibility as well. Shupavu, how far is the reach so far?
So our reach is all over the country, right? So we have students, for example, last year we had a project where 500 students were introduced to it in Dadaab refugee camp. By the end of the year, we had 3,000 users from that camp.
Wow.
Now we're in Kakuma launching with 3,000 students, and now up to over 5,000 people from Kakuma have come. So, I mean, it's really hard to get to some of the remote areas. I mean, I've been to some places in Lamu where I can't even get cell signal. But if there's cell signal and users using it in a certain area, we generally find that people will pick it up, especially through word of mouth.
And some of these areas areas where it's not, a supplement to the education that they're getting. This is the basic education that they're getting.
This is the basic education that we're getting. So, one of our parents, Mama Imelda, she was actually about to move to a rural area because, or back to the village, essentially, because she couldn't pay for life here in Nairobi. And so she had her student at home, and the only thing that stopped her from going home, as her own decision, was because her student had found Shupavu 291. And so for about 4 months, they were taking courses and asking questions on our platform. And when they actually did the test at the end of the year, they came in 4th place in class, higher from their position before. And the teachers were asking her, hey, did you have any other tutors, like, working with your daughter? And she was like, no, I was actually just using Shupavu 291. So we do find that people who actually don't have any other resources, can use this as a full access to all their education.
When it comes to technology, there's so many challenges. As you mentioned, there are places where you don't get cell service. What are some of the main challenges that you're facing?
So that's one of them. One of them is that, in places where there's no cell signal, what comes to my mind is that those users are probably also not getting a myriad of other services, because you imagine these are places where you probably don't have running water, you probably don't have
indeed
electricity, just because even the cell grids, which most of the mobile telcos like Safaricom maintain on oil and gas. So that's one of the challenges. The other challenges is, we want to create a sustainable business out of this, and that's why we charge 10 shillings per week, and we want the numbers to really be able to bring in the income. And what we find is there's a lot of students, so about 70% of the students who are active on our platform don't pay for it. But we don't stop them from not using it, because we actually understand that airtime is actually a big problem for such students. So in those cases, we work with non-governmental organizations to sponsor students for a year, so that they can also see the value in paying for themselves. Because what you'll find is these students using it for free, the parents have also not bought in. For parents who buy into the platform, you'll find they're not just buying the SMS app, they'll go into the Android app, they'll also use the web. And so, really trying to raise that awareness of, why should you value education, that, what we're giving is sort of like a Netflix for learning, because you get in, and for a small subscription, you get everything you want. And we have live teachers standing by to answer your responses. So those are the two challenges. The third challenge, obviously, that everyone's having is policy as well, right? I think that you can't really change education in a year. In fact, education is one of those things that takes 10 years to change. But I believe that the beauty about technology that allows us to stand up to that challenge is one that, with technology, you can act as a platform and not necessarily the content publisher. So the only reason we ended up publishing content is when we initially created content with teachers, we found that they were creating very low quality content. So we went and found our own expert teachers and almost created like a workshop of teachers to create our content. And so, it's been great that we've been able, for example, in Kenya to put class 4 to form 4 content on there. We have content for ECD teachers, we have content for teachers, but I think that the real dream with technology is that people will be able, great content creators will be able to come to Eneza and access a great user base of users who are hungry to learn. And Eneza will be able to offer them, great analytics on users. Basically, we'll be able to build classrooms on all new stuff. If students want to learn about Brexit and how Brexit can affect, how people think about voting, and what are the things you can learn that you actually teach in social studies. We want to drive the great teachers who can create such great lessons that really can take an abstract concept and teach our students in rural areas about practically anything in math, English, and the other core areas.
It's a big project, however you look at it, because first of all, it's based on technology, and then it spreads across the country. Who are the partners that you're working with to make this possible?
So there are a number of partners. So one is Safaricom, obviously. They have really wide reach in Kenya. And back in 2012, when we were talking to them, we were telling them, hey, Safaricom, we don't see what you guys are doing for education. And they said, what do you have in mind? We'd already started the project. And it was, at that time, because we were just starting up, we couldn't even manage kind of the SMS cost, and we couldn't find a good business model. So with them, we then kind of created the subscription service model. So we were actually the first partner with Safaricom to launch the 10 shillings per week, where you don't pay per SMS, but sort of you pay for weekly content.
Exactly.
And so I think they've been a great innovator in helping us even try out new things with our users, try out new ways of sending content, new ways of generating data, and all these other sorts of things that typically in other countries you find that mobile telcos haven't developed. So we're actually teaching some of the telcos in the other countries that we've gone to, hey, by the way, so this is a subscription service, this is how it should work, this is how we've done it with Safaricom, and we're actually using that to kind of teach people how to move forward. The other partners are the teachers. We don't create the content ourselves. We have teachers who work for the Examinations Council and who are approved by TSC, who then create the content, and then we take the content to our other partner, who's KICD, and KICD approves all the content. So in one way that our startup is different from your average business is, for example, when we went to the ministry and we couldn't get that endorsement of the content straight up, we went created the content ourselves and then brought it back into the pipeline to actually get approved. And that's how we've been able to use those partnerships to get where we want faster and still create very high quality content.
Now, there's someone who asked earlier on, this is Miss Muturi, if I'm not wrong. The challenges that some children face with disabilities, do you know what they go through to learn the same curriculum? Is there a platform, or is there a way that children with disabilities can actually have this service as well?
Yes, we were actually discussing that yesterday. I mean, we have plans to make Eneza available for children with disabilities, and this could be in different ways. So, for example, we have the SMS content, and most of it is in text format. So that content works extremely well for deaf students, because then deaf students, as much as they're learning with their teacher, and the teacher is signing to all the students, which is in the same way how students are learning in other classes, that they can go and use this platform to then take their own learning. We've done a bit of R&D with kind of audio lessons for blind students, but then we have much more diverse and some more complicated disabilities. For example, autism and cerebral palsy. So my brother, who passed on in 2012, had cerebral palsy, and so from the beginning he couldn't walk, he couldn't talk, he couldn't stand, couldn't speak. But you could tell that he had a very overwhelming sense of curiosity, and so my parents had a lot of frustration. Taking him to school, getting him the support he needed and therapy. And at one point, I think he was about 12, we did realize that he couldn't learn like other students. And so the plan was, to take him to a school where other students are learning, and then he would just kind of blend in with the community and pick up whatever he could pick up. But we found that there were big problems in that, some of the parents who were there even said stuff like, hey, your son is scaring our kids, or, your son is making that. So in a case like that, so we didn't give up, we kept taking him to school. But in the case that a parent would take their student home, or like I was talking to Juliet from Safaricom, whose brother has autism, the mother had to quit school for, to quit work for about 5 years to just educate the student on how to read. And so in terms of those disabilities where it's very extreme and those students can't use Shupavu, we want to create content for those parents. So if a parent is homeschooling, sort of very much like our ECD content, if the child is too young to learn or unable to learn, then we empower the guardians who are with them with content that can make sure that they're checking off all the curriculum points as they try and give these students education.
Kago, this began as a noble cause. Now it's something that people will depend on. What's the future of Shupavu?
Shupavu first did not start as a noble cause. I think we were thinking of it as an education revolution, right? Everywhere you looked, you definitely see people creating better schools, more high-tech schools with iPads, and then you have the students who are able to access Khan Academy on their Android app. They have data, and then you have the really, really extreme students who can't access anything, and they probably only have SMS phones. And now, as much as we have all technology for all devices, every day I wake up and the people that take me to work are the people who don't have that access, because all these other people have been sorted out by the biggest companies, biggest corporations, biggest textbook publishers, and those who just are in that segment where no one is looking at them, it's literally because no one is looking at them. And those are the users who are most active on our platform, because this is probably the first tech they've ever used. They don't have access to the fancy iPads. Even those fancy NGO programs haven't reached them. And so those are the users who I want to keep getting. And what I believe is those users can get access to, great information and up-to-date information just like every other student. In India, they dropped a computer in a certain village and the students couldn't learn English. They'd never seen a computer before, and they just left it there. And they came back after 3 months, and there was a student who, if you asked him a question, for example, point me to the desktop, the student would look at you and be like, what's a desktop? But if you told the student something like, turn on the Wi-Fi of this computer, or do something that was specific to how to use the computer, there were students who knew that stuff by heart in just 3 months. And so the idea is that if you judge people based on where they're coming from or even their ability to communicate, it's not going to work. But if you actually expose students to technology, they find ways to learn and create synapses or connections in their mind that allow them to be critical thinkers. It was the same case for me back when I started using the internet in was this 1995. So back then the internet used to cost 7,000 shillings an hour. Writing an email for someone was 1,000 shillings. And back then, when I got onto the internet, I very quickly, in less than 2 years, realized I was learning much more than other students were learning. My classroom was this place where students were sort of taking this curriculum and feeling great about themselves, but I wanted to know more and more and more. And so I believe if we use technology to take education, not just education, it could be even just as basic as taking the internet so that students can get on and discover and start learning for themselves. I think that's how we're going to equip the people who have no access to be on the same level as the people who have access. Probably even much better than the people who have access, because they've got to a comfortable plateau.
Indeed. Passionate, indeed. How can people find out more about Eneza and, of course, Shupavu?
Yeah, tweet us. We are at Eneza Education on Twitter. We are Eneza Education on Facebook. You can go to our website, enezaeducation.com. Yeah, if you have students who are in class 8 that from 4, tell them to pick up their phones, dial *291#. We've actually recently published this year's hardest lessons. So we've taken the data for this whole year and said what are the questions that students are failing the most on our platform, and we're offering this to students in Form 4 and Class 8. All they need to do is text revise to our platform, and they'll be able to take essentially the very hard past papers on our platform. But to all the candidates out there, I'm wishing you all the best in your success. And anytime you have feedback, want to talk about where education is going, want to talk about how to get this technology in your school, your home, or your community, just tweet us on at Eneza Education or call 0707 908 308. That's our customer care line, 0707 908 308. Thank you.
Kago Kagichiri, CEO, Eneza Education, Shupavu 291. Thank you so much for making time. Always a pleasure to have you.
Yeah, always good to be here.
So come back when we're 2 million and we'll talk some more.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome.
That should be like in December.
We pray. Definitely we pray. Thank you so